There's a certain silence that doesn't come from the absence of noise. It comes from the absence of love. That was the kind of silence that filled my house every night after Sophie went to sleep. The hum of the refrigerator, the ticking clock on the wall, even the faint barking of a neighbor's dog outside. They were all just background sounds to a deeper stillness that lived inside me. When people see a single mother, they think of resilience, of strength. They don't see the quiet moments when you sit on the edge of your bed and wonder if life will ever feel full again. They don't see how the heart becomes cautious, almost defensive, as if love were an intruder rather than a guest. I wasn't bitter. At least that's what I kept telling myself. My ex-husband, Mark, had left 4 years earlier, and I had built a new life out of what he'd broken. I found a job at a local design studio, moved into a small house in Willow Creek, and dedicated every ounce of my energy to raising Sophie. She was 9, bright, curious, with a heart far too kind for this world. Every morning she'd leave her little notes on the kitchen counter, drawn in crayon, "Love you, Mommy." Sometimes those words were the only thing keeping me from falling apart. Willow Creek was a small town where gossip traveled faster than the wind. People knew when you changed your hair, when you painted your porch, when you smiled again after a long time. They knew, of course, that Mark had left me for another woman. They pitied me at first. Then they stopped mentioning his name. I thought I had buried that part of my life, but grief is strange. It doesn't leave when you're done with it. It leaves when it's done with you. There were days when I felt proud of the life I'd rebuilt, and there were other days when I looked at my reflection in the mirror and didn't recognize the woman staring back. My eyes had learned to hide stories they once told too easily. My smile had become something I wore politely, not something I truly felt. Still, I kept moving. For Sophie. For me. For the idea that maybe, someday, peace would feel like enough. Love wasn't something I searched for anymore. I had already paid the price for believing too quickly, for trusting too deeply. When Mark walked out, he didn't just take the future we'd planned, he took my sense of safety with him. It's strange how betrayal doesn't just make you fear others, it makes you doubt your own ability to choose. Sometimes, late at night, I'd hear Sophie's small footsteps padding into my room. She'd climb into my bed without a word, her little hands finding mine in the dark. "Are you okay, Mommy?" she'd whisper. And I'd lie, because mothers do that. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Go back to sleep." But even as I said it, she'd tighten her hold, as if she knew that some nights, even grown-ups need to be held. I thought that was enough, to live quietly, to love my daughter fiercely, to expect nothing more. But deep down, something still stirred. A quiet ache, the kind that doesn't shout, it just waits. I remember one particular evening, early spring, the air still crisp, the smell of rain clinging to the ground. I was sitting by the window after putting Sophie to bed, watching the lights flicker in the houses across the street, families together, laughter faintly echoing through thin walls. I felt like I was on the outside of something sacred, peering in through the glass. That's when I said it aloud, almost without realizing. Is this it? Is this what my life will be now? The silence that followed was deafening. And yet, in that silence, I felt something shift. A faint whisper inside me, telling me that life wasn't done surprising me. I didn't know that love was already walking toward me, quiet and unassuming, just around the corner. I didn't know that his name was Ethan Hayes, or that his smile would make Sophie laugh in a way I hadn't heard in years. I didn't know that the same heart I had locked away would soon be tested again, not by heartbreak, but by the terrifying possibility of happiness. Looking back now, I realized that the quiet before love isn't empty, it's sacred. It's the space life gives you to breathe, to rebuild, to prepare your heart for what's coming next. But at that time, all I could feel was the loneliness. Every story begins somewhere, and mine began in that silence, the kind that hums just before something beautiful breaks through. That night, As I turned off the lights and walked toward Sophie's room, I paused at her door. She was asleep, one arm around her stuffed rabbit, her face peaceful. I brushed a lock of hair from her forehead and whispered, "It's just us, baby girl. Just us." I believed those words when I said them. But life had other plans. It started on a Wednesday, the kind of ordinary day that never warns you it's about to change everything. I was at the design studio, buried in layouts and color palettes, when Ethan Hayes walked in with that quiet kind of confidence people don't need to announce. He was there to discuss a small renovation project. The community center was looking for new branding and interior ideas. I remember thinking how calm he seemed, how he looked everyone in the eye when he spoke. There was nothing strikingly extraordinary about him at first glance. No movie star glow, no practiced charm. But there was a steadiness in his voice, something grounded, something safe. Maybe that's why I looked up one time too many when he spoke. It had been years since a man's voice had made me forget the noise in my own head. When he smiled at me, it wasn't the kind of smile meant to impress. It was warm, unassuming, as if he could see right past the walls I'd built and didn't mind them. I wasn't used to that. After the meeting, I caught him lingering by the reception desk, making small talk with Laura, my friend and coworker. When I walked past, he turned toward me. "Emily, right?" I nodded. "I wanted to thank you for your ideas today. You've got a real feel for space. I think people are going to love what you create for that center." It was such a simple compliment, but the way he said it made me forget how to respond for a moment. "Thank you," I finally managed. "I just like creating places that feel like home." He smiled again, slower this time, softer. "Maybe that's because you know what home should feel like." Something inside me stirred, a warmth I hadn't felt in a long time. I brushed it off, of course. I had no business feeling anything like that again. But Ethan wasn't the kind of man who vanished after a meeting. The following week, he stopped by again, just to check in, though I suspected he could have handled everything by phone. We ended up talking about music, books, and how small Willow Creek could feel on rainy afternoons. He told me he'd moved there a few months earlier, trading city chaos for quiet mornings and mountain air. He was easy to talk to. Too easy. I found myself laughing, real laughter, the kind that echoes from the chest, not the polite kind you offer in social situations. I didn't realize how much I missed that sound until I heard it again. Still, I kept a safe distance. I told myself it was just friendship, just conversation. But one evening, as I was locking up the studio, I saw his truck waiting outside. He offered to drive me home because of the rain. I hesitated, then accepted. When we reached my house, Sophie ran to the door to greet me. She looked at Ethan curiously, hiding halfway behind my leg. "Hi there," he said gently, crouching down to her level. "You must be Sophie. I heard you like drawing." Her eyes lit up. "I do. Mommy says I'm getting better. Well, maybe one day you'll design things too, just like her." It was such a small exchange, but I saw something change in Sophie's eyes. She didn't just like him. She trusted him instantly. And that meant everything to me. I had told him about her early on. I wanted to be clear. I was a mother first, always. I'd seen too many men walk away when children entered the picture. But Ethan's reaction had been nothing like what I feared. "You have a daughter? That's great," he had said, with genuine warmth. "Kids have a way of reminding us what really matters." That was the moment I knew he wasn't like the others. Over the next few weeks, Ethan became part of our little world almost naturally. He'd stop by with takeout after long days, help Sophie with her art projects, and sit with me on the porch while the sun went down. There was no rush, no pressure, just quiet companionship. I started to notice how he looked at me when I wasn't paying attention, as if memorizing the details of my face. One night, we were sitting outside, Sophie already asleep, the air heavy with the scent of pine and rain. Ethan looked at me for a long moment before speaking. "You know what I think, Emily?" I turned to him. "What?" "I think you've forgotten how beautiful you are when you're happy." I didn't know what to say. My throat tightened. Tears stung my eyes, not from sadness, but from the simple shock of being seen. He wasn't talking about looks. He was talking about something deeper, about light, about presence, about how I'd stopped believing I could still shine. That night, after he left, I stood by the window and watched his taillights fade into the darkness. I realized my hands were trembling, not from fear, but from hope. I hadn't planned to fall for anyone again. I'd promised myself I wouldn't, but promises made in pain are often broken by love. And love, as I was about to learn, doesn't always come with warning signs or grand entrances. Sometimes, it just walks quietly into your life, brings dinner for your daughter, and makes you laugh on a Tuesday night, until you can't remember what loneliness used to feel like. There's a certain magic that happens when laughter returns to a house that's been silent for too long. It doesn't arrive all at once. It creeps in slowly, like sunlight through half-closed curtains. That's what Ethan brought into our lives. Light, warmth. A sense that maybe, just maybe, life had decided to give me another chance at happiness. At first, everything felt fragile, as if one wrong move could break the delicate peace we'd found. But little by little, that fear gave way to something softer. Comfort. I began to look forward to his visits, to the sound of his truck pulling up in the driveway, to Sophie's excited voice calling, "Mom, Ethan's here." He had a way of turning ordinary evenings into small celebrations. Sometimes he'd bring over pizza and a movie. Other times he'd show up with a new board game or a bouquet of wildflowers he'd picked from the fields outside town. He'd laugh and say, "They're not store-bought, but they're real." And somehow, that made them even more beautiful. Sophie adored him. It wasn't just the presents or the games. It was the way he listened to her. He'd kneel down to her height, take her questions seriously, and never rush her answers. "You've got a smart one here," he told me once, winking. "She's going to rule the world someday." I laughed, brushing a strand of hair behind my ear. "Let's just start with her finishing her homework first." He chuckled. Fair enough. Watching them together filled me with a joy I hadn't felt in years, a joy that scared me, because I knew what it was to lose something good. I knew how easily love could be taken away. But Ethan didn't seem afraid of that. He didn't tiptoe around my past or act as though he needed to compete with it. He just showed up, steady, kind, patient. He didn't try to fix my life. He simply became part of it. On Sundays, he'd come over for lunch. The three of us would eat on the back porch, surrounded by the scent of grilled corn and the sound of cicadas. Sophie would talk endlessly, telling stories from school or making up wild adventures about her dolls. Ethan would listen, laughing at every twist, asking questions as though her imagination were the most fascinating thing in the world. One afternoon, Sophie looked at him seriously and said, "You laugh a lot, Ethan." He smiled. "That's because your stories are the best ones I've ever heard." Then she grinned, showing the little gap between her front teeth. "Mom laughs more now, too. You make her happy." I froze for a second, embarrassed, but Ethan just looked at me and said quietly, "I'm glad." That was the thing about him. He never pushed, never demanded. He just made space for us, and somehow that space filled itself with laughter. It had been so long since I'd seen my daughter this light, this carefree. The house felt different. The same walls, the same furniture, but alive again. Music played in the kitchen while we cooked. Sophie danced barefoot on the tiles, her hair flying as she spun. Ethan clapped along, pretending to be a terrible singer just to make her giggle. And I found myself laughing, until tears rolled down my cheeks. One evening, after Sophie had gone to bed, Ethan and I stayed on the couch, the soft glow of the lamp wrapping us in quiet intimacy. We talked about everything: his childhood, my dreams, the things we both feared. He told me about losing his father young, about watching his mother carry the weight of everything alone. She used to say laughter was her armor, he said. I didn't understand what she meant back then, but now I do. I smiled faintly. Maybe that's why you make us laugh so much. You're giving us armor too. He looked at me with those steady eyes that always seemed to see more than I said. Maybe I'm just giving back what I wish someone had given her. Silence lingered, but it wasn't the heavy kind. It was warm, filled with all the words we didn't need to say. When he reached for my hand, it felt natural, inevitable, like something that had been waiting for years to happen. I rested my head on his shoulder and whispered, "You feel like home." He smiled. Then maybe it's time you stop being afraid of living in it. That night, after he left, I walked into Sophie's room. She was asleep, her small hand still clutching the corner of her blanket. I sat beside her, brushed her hair gently, and whispered, "We're okay, baby. We're really okay." But a quiet voice inside me, the cautious one, the mother, the survivor, whispered back, "For now." I pushed the thought away, choosing instead to hold on to the laughter echoing faintly through the house. For the first time in years, it felt like love wasn't something I had to fight for. It was something that simply wanted to stay. I didn't know it then, but that peace, that fragile happiness, was already standing on borrowed time. It happened on a Sunday, the kind of day that started with sunlight and laughter and ended with a storm. Ethan had come over for lunch, as he always did. Sophie was in the backyard with him, showing off the tiny vegetable garden she'd been so proud of. I watched them through the kitchen window while setting the table. The sight made my heart swell. Ethan's gentle patience, Sophie's bright laughter, the two of them kneeling in the dirt like they'd been family forever. For a moment, everything felt perfect, safe, whole. And then the doorbell rang. When I opened the door, my heart dropped. Mark was standing there, unannounced, uninvited, and already angry. His eyes swept past me into the house, sharp and territorial. "Where's Sophie?" he demanded. "She's in the backyard," I said, keeping my voice calm. "But you should have called first, Mark. You can't just—" He brushed past me before I could finish, his boots thudding against the wooden floor. "I'll get her myself." By the time I followed him outside, Sophie had already run to him. She didn't know better. She still loved her father in the innocent way only children can love people who've hurt them. "Daddy," she called, wrapping her arms around his waist. He held her for a moment, then looked up and froze. His eyes landed on Ethan, who stood a few feet away, dirt on his hands, smiling politely. "And who the hell is this?" Mark asked, his tone sharp enough to cut glass. I stepped forward. "Mark, this is Ethan. He's my—" "Boyfriend?" he interrupted, his voice dripping with disbelief. "You brought a man here? Around our daughter?" I felt the heat rise in my chest. "Mark, this is my home, and you have no right—" "I have every right," he snapped. "As long as my daughter lives under this roof, I get a say in what goes on here." Ethan tried to step in, extending a hand in civility. "Mark, I understand this must be uncomfortable. I just want—" But Mark ignored him completely, turning his fury back to me. "You don't get to play house with some stranger while I'm still paying for this roof over your head. You understand that?" The words stung, not because they were true, they weren't, but because they were meant to humiliate me, to remind me of the control he once had. Sophie looked between us, confused, frightened. Her small voice broke the tension. "Daddy, don't yell at Mommy." That was when Ethan quietly placed a hand on her shoulder and whispered, "Hey, sweetheart, why don't you go inside and wash your hands? We'll be right there." She hesitated, but obeyed. When the screen door closed behind her, I turned to Mark. "Don't you ever speak to me like that in front of her again." Mark's eyes burned with resentment. "You're making a mistake, Emily. You don't even know this guy. How long has it been?" "What? A few months? You're gonna let some man play daddy now?" I took a deep breath, forcing my hands to stop shaking. "Ethan isn't trying to replace you, but he's kind to her. He cares. And that's more than I can say for you most days." His face twisted, the color rising in his neck. "You've got some nerve. I'm her father. Then start acting like one." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The wind rustled through the trees, carrying away the last of the laughter that had filled the yard only minutes ago. Finally, Mark turned to leave, his voice cold. "We'll talk later, and if I find out that man's staying here again, you'll regret it." He didn't wait for me to respond. The door slammed behind him, the sound echoing through the house like a gunshot. When I turned back, Ethan was standing there, his jaw tense, his eyes full of concern. "You okay?" I nodded, though my voice trembled. "He's just being himself." "He had no right to talk to you that way," Ethan said quietly. "Not here, not in front of her." "I know," I whispered, "but you don't know Mark. He's the kind of man who thinks he still owns whatever he's lost." Ethan exhaled slowly, running a hand through his hair. "I didn't want to make things harder for you." "You didn't," I said, though deep down I knew things had just changed. That night after Ethan left, I lay awake long after Sophie fell asleep. My mind replayed every word, every glare. The peace I'd worked so hard to rebuild suddenly felt fragile again, like glass ready to crack. I looked toward Sophie's room, hearing the soft rhythm of her breathing, and I felt the familiar pull of fear, the one that had followed me since the divorce. Mark had always known how to use that fear against me. As I closed my eyes, I told myself it was over, that he'd calm down and move on. But deep down, I knew better. Men like Mark didn't disappear. They lingered like shadows, quiet, cold, waiting for the next chance to remind you that freedom always comes with a cost. And as I lay there in the dark, I could already feel the price coming due. For a few days after that Sunday, I tried to convince myself that Mark's outburst had been nothing more than anger, a wounded man's pride lashing out. He had always been possessive, controlling in subtle ways, but I believed he would eventually calm down. He'd get used to the idea that I had moved on, that Ethan wasn't some stranger passing through my life. But I was wrong. It started with phone calls, short, cold, always late at night. He'd ask how Sophie was, pretending to care, then twist the conversation until it turned into something darker. "So, you're still seeing that guy?" "Yes, Mark. His name is Ethan." "You really think it's smart bringing him around our daughter?" "She likes him. He's good to her." "Good to her? You don't even know him. What if he's one of those men who act nice and then—" "Stop!" My voice would shake, but I never let him finish. "You don't get to make me afraid anymore." But that was exactly what he wanted, to plant fear, to remind me that my freedom was fragile. Then one night, his voice changed. He wasn't angry anymore. He was calm. "I've been talking to my lawyer," he said, "and if you keep this up, letting strange men around Sophie, I'll go to court. I'll file for custody." My breath caught. "You can't do that." "I can," he said flatly, "and I will. You're making reckless choices, Emily. I don't want my daughter raised in a house with some man sleeping over. I'll tell the judge everything. You'd be surprised how sympathetic they are to fathers these days." Then he hung up. That night, I sat in the kitchen long after midnight, staring at the dark window, listening to the hum of the refrigerator. My hands were trembling. I hated that he still had that power over me. The power to make me doubt myself, to make me afraid of losing the one thing that mattered more than anything: Sophie. When Ethan called the next morning, I tried to sound normal. "You sound tired," he said. "I didn't sleep much," I admitted. He paused. "It's about him, isn't it?" I hesitated, then told him everything: the threats, the calls, the words that still echoed in my head. For a moment, there was only silence. Then Ethan said quietly, "He's trying to control you. You can't let him win." "I know," I whispered. "But what if he's serious? What if he really tries to take her from me?" Ethan's voice softened. "You're a good mother, Emily. No judge in the world would give her to a man like him. He's bluffing." Maybe he was right, but fear doesn't care about logic. It only knows how to grow. Over the next week, Mark's behavior escalated. He'd show up unannounced at Sophie's school, insisting on checking in. He called my office once, leaving a message that made my boss raise an eyebrow. "Everything okay at home?" she asked gently. I lied and said it was fine. I told no one else, not even Laura. Shame has a way of silencing you, making you feel like your pain is somehow your fault. Ethan, though, refused to stay silent. One evening after dinner, he took my hands across the table. "You can't keep letting him do this. You need to set boundaries, or talk to someone about it legally." I shook my head. "That'll only make it worse. You don't know him, Ethan. He'll do whatever it takes to get what he wants." He leaned forward. "What he wants is control. The only power he has is the fear you give him." His words were true, but they hurt, because deep down I knew that fear had already taken root. That night, after Ethan left, I sat beside Sophie's bed, watching her sleep. Her face looked peaceful, untouched by the storm building around us. I ran my fingers through her hair and whispered, "I won't let anyone take you from me. Ever." But my heart ached with uncertainty. Mark knew exactly where to strike. He knew I would sacrifice anything, even love, to protect my child. And that's how fear works. It doesn't shout. It whispers. It convinces you that surrender is safety. The next morning, I found a note taped to my front door. His handwriting was unmistakable. "If you want to keep Sophie, end it with him. You've been warned." My knees went weak. The paper trembled in my hands. By the time Ethan stopped by that evening, I'd already made up my mind. Or rather, my fear had made it for me. I smiled when I opened the door, pretending everything was normal. But he saw it in my eyes, the distance, the hesitation. "Emily," he said quietly, "what's going on?" I wanted to tell him everything. I wanted to fall into his arms and let him protect me, to believe love could be stronger than fear. But when I looked toward Sophie's room, I knew I couldn't take that risk. Because love can survive heartbreak. But a mother's heart can't survive losing her child. That night, as I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, Mark's words repeated in my mind like a curse. "If you want to keep Sophie, end it with him." And I knew I would, even if it broke me. Fear has a way of sounding logical when you listen to it long enough. It dresses itself in reason, in protection, in the language of love, until you can no longer tell the difference between courage and foolishness. That's what happened to me. I thought I was being a mother. I thought I was keeping Sophie safe. But in truth, I was just letting Mark win. The morning I decided to end things with Ethan, the sky looked strangely peaceful. Soft light spilling through the kitchen window, the smell of toast, and Sophie's laughter drifting through the house. It was an ordinary day, which made the pain feel almost cruel. Because sometimes the world looks most beautiful when your heart is breaking. I remember standing at the sink, washing a mug, watching the water swirl down the drain as if it could take my thoughts with it. I knew what I had to do. Mark's note was still hidden in the drawer beneath the phone, his handwriting burned into my mind. If you want to keep Sophie, end it with him. He didn't need to threaten again. I understood the message. I'd seen the way fear could twist truth into something believable, how the mere possibility of losing my daughter was enough to paralyze me. Ethan called that afternoon. "Can I come by tonight?" he asked. "I got something for Sophie." I hesitated. My throat tightened. "Sure," I whispered, my voice barely holding steady. When he arrived, Sophie ran to him like she always did, jumping into his arms, squealing with delight as he handed her a small wrapped box. Inside was a sketchbook embossed with her name in gold. "So you can keep all your drawings in one place," he said. She hugged him tightly. "Thank you, you're the best." And in that moment, watching the two of them, my heart cracked wide open, because I knew I was about to destroy the only happiness we had found in years. After Sophie went to bed, I asked him to stay for a minute. He smiled unaware and sat on the couch, his hands loosely folded. "I've been thinking," I began, staring at the floor. "About what?" "Us?" He straightened slightly, his expression softening. "What about us?" I forced myself to meet his eyes. "I don't think we should see each other anymore." For a second, he didn't move, as if he hadn't heard me right. "What?" It's not working," I said quickly, my words mechanical, rehearsed. "It's too complicated. I think it's better if we end things now." He blinked, confusion giving way to disbelief. "Emily, where is this coming from? Did I do something wrong?" "No, it's not you." I could feel my hands trembling. "I just don't want this anymore." He leaned forward, his voice barely above a whisper. "You're lying." My eyes burned. "Ethan." "No," he said softly, shaking his head. "You love me." "I know you do. So what's really going on?" I swallowed hard. The truth pressed against my throat, desperate to escape. Tell him about the calls, the note, the fear that has been eating you alive." But then I thought of Sophie, her tiny hands clutching her blanket, her laughter that filled this house again because of him, and I saw everything I could lose. So I lied. "I don't love you anymore." The words came out broken, shaky, but final, and once they were spoken, I couldn't take them back. For a long time, Ethan just stared at me, his jaw tightened, his eyes glistening with hurt. "You don't mean that." "I do." He rose slowly, like someone trying to keep from shattering. "Then there's nothing left to say." He walked toward the door. My heart screamed for me to stop him, to run after him, to tell him everything. But my legs wouldn't move. Fear had turned me into stone. When the door closed behind him, the silence that followed was unbearable. It was like the air had been sucked out of the room. I sank to the floor and cried, not the soft kind of crying, but the kind that rips through you, the kind you can't control. I pressed my hands to my mouth to keep from waking Sophie, but the sobs came anyway. I had broken my own heart. I had traded love for safety. And still, it didn't feel safe. It just felt empty. That night, I barely slept. Every creak of the house felt like a reminder of what I'd done. In the dark, I kept hearing his voice. "You love me. I know you do." The next morning, Sophie noticed. Children always do. "Mommy," she said, tilting her head, "why are your eyes puffy?" I smiled weakly. "Just tired, sweetheart." "Is Ethan coming over today?" I froze. "No, honey. He's busy." Her face fell. "Oh, I wanted to show him my new drawing." I turned away, pretending to clean the counter, because if I looked at her, I'd break again. All day, I moved through the motions. Work, dinner, bedtime, like someone half alive. The house was quiet again, the kind of silence that used to feel safe, but now only reminded me of everything I'd lost. And as I sat by Sophie's bed that night, brushing her hair, I realized something terrible. I hadn't just lost Ethan. I had lost the woman I was becoming. The one who laughed again, who hoped again, who believed in love again. Fear had won, and I didn't even have the strength left to hate it for doing so. The days that followed blurred together like a long gray season that refused to end. 3 weeks. That's how long it had been since Ethan walked out of my house and out of my life. I counted the days without meaning to, like someone tracing the edges of an old wound. Each one began the same way. A forced smile for Sophie, a cup of coffee that went cold before I could drink it, and a hollow ache that never really left. At work, I functioned on autopilot. My coworkers probably thought I was just tired. I'd nod along during meetings, pretending to listen, while my mind drifted to him, his voice, his laughter, the way his hand felt when it brushed against mine. I'd open my inbox half expecting to see his name, though I knew I never would. Ethan wasn't the kind of man to chase someone who'd pushed him away. The house felt different now, too quiet. The laughter that once filled it had vanished, leaving behind echoes that seemed almost cruel. Sometimes I'd catch myself setting an extra plate at the table, only to realize what I was doing and put it back in the cabinet. Sophie noticed, of course. One evening, as I tucked her into bed, she looked at me with those big, knowing eyes. "Mommy," she said softly, "are you still sad?" I hesitated, brushing her hair from her forehead. "A little," I admitted, "but I'll be okay." "Is it because of Ethan?" The sound of his name nearly broke me. I forced a smile. "Why do you ask that?" "Because you don't laugh like before," she whispered, "and I miss him too." Her words pierced through me. It wasn't just my heart that had paid the price for my decision. It was hers too. Ethan had become part of her world, and I had taken that away without even asking how she felt. That night, after she fell asleep, I sat by the window, staring into the darkness outside. The sky over Willow Creek was unusually clear, stars scattered like tiny shards of light. I tried to find comfort in their stillness, but it only reminded me how far away everything I wanted now seemed. I thought about calling him, just to hear his voice, to tell him the truth, to confess that I had lied, that I had been scared, that I still loved him. But every time I reached for the phone, I saw Mark's note in my mind, the sharp letters carved into my memory. "If you want to keep Sophie, end it with him." And so I stayed silent. But silence, I learned, is not peace. It's just a slower form of breaking. During those 3 weeks, Mark didn't call. Not once. It was as if, after taking what he wanted, he'd vanished. Maybe he believed his point had been made. Maybe he enjoyed knowing that I was living in the aftermath of his threat. Either way, his absence didn't feel like relief. It felt like a victory I'd handed him. Everywhere I went, I saw reminders of Ethan. The coffee shop where we used to meet after work. The bookstore where he once bought Sophie a story about a brave little girl who tamed storms. Even the park near the school. I could still hear his laughter as he pushed her on the swing, pretending to be too weak to keep up. There's a cruelty in how memory works. It doesn't just replay what happened, it replays what could have happened. One Sunday morning, I drove out to the edge of town, near the lake where he and I had once gone for a walk. The water shimmered under the sunlight, still and unbothered. I sat there for nearly an hour, just staring, wondering if he ever came back to this place too. If he stood where I was standing and thought of me. I wanted to believe he did. As the weeks passed, people began to notice my quietness. Laura, my friend from the studio, asked one day over lunch, "What happened with that guy you were seeing? The one who made you smile again?" I froze, my fork halfway to my mouth. "It just didn't work out," I said. She frowned. "Didn't work out, or you got scared it might?" Her question lingered long after I left the cafe. Fear, that word again. the invisible thread running through everything I'd lost. That evening, while Sophie was doing her homework, I found myself pacing the living room. I kept looking at the phone on the counter. Just one call, I thought. One chance to tell him the truth. But what if he had moved on? What if the silence had already buried us? Still, that night I couldn't take it anymore. I dialed his number with shaking hands. It rang twice before I heard his voice. Familiar, calm, but distant. Hello? For a moment I couldn't speak. My throat closed around the words. Then I whispered, "Ethan, it's me." There was a pause, not cold, just surprised. "Emily." He said my name like it was something fragile. "Hi." My voice broke. "I needed to hear your voice." He was quiet for a long moment. Then he sighed. "It's been 3 weeks." "I know," I whispered. "I'm sorry." Another silence. Then, gently, "What do you want from me, Emily?" The truth hung on the edge of my tongue. "I want you back. I want what we were before fear got in the way." But instead I said, "Can we meet, just to talk?" He hesitated. I could almost hear his heart in that pause. Then finally, "Tomorrow, after work." When the call ended, I sat in the dark, holding the phone to my chest, my heart pounding. For the first time in weeks, there was a flicker of hope, small, fragile, but alive. Tomorrow, I thought. Maybe tomorrow I can make it right. But I didn't know then that some tomorrows don't bring redemption. Some bring the truth, and the truth doesn't always save you. The next day, the world felt different, sharper somehow, as if the air itself knew I was about to face the moment I'd been both dreading and longing for. I woke up early, before Sophie stirred, and sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee that went untouched. My hands trembled. Every sound, the ticking clock, the hum of the refrigerator, seemed louder than usual, as if time were mocking me. I had rehearsed what I wanted to say 100 times in my head. "Tell him the truth, Emily. Tell him you lied. Tell him it was fear, not love, that made you walk away." But deep down, I knew that apologies don't always heal what fear destroys. Sometimes they only arrive too late. That afternoon, I drove to the cafe where we had first met. It was quiet, the kind of place where time seemed to slow down. Ethan was already there, sitting by the window, a coffee in front of him. He looked the same, and yet, somehow, not the same at all. The warmth in his eyes had cooled into something steadier, more guarded. When he saw me, he gave a small, polite smile. "Hey." "Hi." My voice sounded foreign to my own ears. I sat down across from him, my heart pounding so loud I could barely hear my own thoughts. For a moment, neither of us spoke. It was strange. How two people who had once shared everything could now struggle to find a single word. Finally, I said, "I owe you the truth." He looked up, his gaze calm but cautious. "Go on." I swallowed hard. "That day, when I told you it was over, when I said I didn't love you, I lied." He didn't move, didn't blink, just stared at me quietly as if weighing every syllable. "I was scared," I continued, my voice shaking. "Mark, my ex, he started threatening me. He said if I didn't end things with you, he'd go to court and try to take Sophie away. He left notes, made calls. I thought he'd never stop. I thought I was protecting her. But all I did was destroy us." The confession left my chest hollow. It felt like stepping off a cliff and hoping the fall might somehow feel like flight. Ethan exhaled slowly and leaned back in his chair. "I figured it had something to do with him," he said quietly. But I didn't want to believe it. "I should have told you," I said. "I should have trusted you enough to fight with me, not shut you out." He nodded slightly, his fingers tapping the edge of his cup. "I wanted to fight for you, Emily. God knows I did. But when you looked me in the eyes and said you didn't love me anymore, I believed you, because what else could I do? Tears blurred my vision. I know. I hate myself for that. I thought I was doing the right thing. He looked out the window for a moment, watching the cars pass by before speaking again. You were scared. I get it. But love can't survive in fear. Not for long. I still love you, I whispered. That hasn't changed. He closed his eyes briefly, as if the words hurt more than silence. You don't know how much I wanted to hear that, he said. But Emily, the way he said my name told me what was coming before the words even reached me. There's someone else now. The air seemed to leave the room. My body went cold. Someone else? He nodded, his eyes soft but firm. It's nothing serious yet, but I had to move on. I couldn't stay stuck in something that kept breaking me. I stared at him, numb. The world outside the window went blurry, a swirl of movement and light that no longer seemed real. So this is it? I asked quietly. He hesitated. I think it has to be. For a long moment, we just sat there in silence. I wanted to beg him to stay, to tell him that I could fix it, that I'd fight this time. But something inside me, maybe pride, maybe exhaustion, kept me still. Because love shouldn't have to be begged for. He reached across the table, taking my hand gently. His touch was familiar, warm, heartbreakingly kind. You deserve peace, Emily. You've been living in fear for too long. Maybe this is how you find it. My throat tightened. You were my peace. He smiled sadly. Then maybe I was just meant to remind you what it felt like. When he stood to leave, I didn't stop him. I watched him walk out into the late afternoon light, the door closing softly behind him. And just like that, the chapter of my life that had once felt like salvation was over. I stayed there long after he was gone, tracing the rim of my coffee cup, trying to remember how to breathe. That night, when I came home, Sophie ran to me, holding up a drawing she'd made, the three of us together, hand in hand, smiling beneath a bright yellow sun. It's us, she said proudly. I'll give it to Ethan when he comes back. I smiled through the ache in my chest. That's beautiful, sweetheart. Maybe one day. When she went to bed, I sat in the dark living room, holding the drawing in my hands. The paper trembled under my fingertips as I whispered, "He's not coming back." But even as I said it, I knew that love doesn't just disappear. It lingers, in the corners of rooms, in the smell of rain, in the laughter of a child who doesn't yet understand what goodbye means. And maybe that's the cruelest part of love. It teaches you how to hold on, but it never teaches you how to let go. After a painful divorce, a single mother finds love again with a kind man who embraces her and her daughter until fear, threats, and a jealous ex force her to choose between protecting her child and losing the love of her life.